Ben Romine. Nate is my husband. We celebrated 14 years of marriage this summer. And marriage is not for the faint of heart. But it is good. It is a good and beautiful and fun thing. But it takes work. And when Mike sent out that list of topics of the things that you were going to be covering in this class regarding marriage, we looked over them and we said, oh, we could talk about this, we could talk about this. But expectations was something that we both came into our marriage with a bag full. And they didn't match. And that causes a lot of waves and frustration, and I mean, it really refines your communication when you have to iron out those expectations, especially when you start having kids and you're deciding where you want to live. And are we going to put our kids in daycare, or I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom? You know, there are all these life questions that are big that you have to figure out together. And you both already have an idea about them. Even though you haven't shared those ideas, you still have some kind of feeling about all these things when you come into your marriage. So that communication is so, so important. So I'm glad that we are able to be here tonight, and Nate is graciously letting me take the lead. And he said he'd be my backup dancer. So he's going to jump up whenever he feels like God's given him something to say. And
in fairness, she prepared all of the materials, and I only got to cast darts at that, like add this and this and that. So she did a lot of the work to prepare the materials.
yeah, my undergrad was in education, so I like writing curriculum. But okay, marriage God's way. So the first thing I think we should do is define what the word expectation means, because everyone can think of a definition for expectation, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page so that as we start talking about it, we all know what we're talking about. So the definition of expectation, according to the Oxford Dictionary, a strong belief that something will happen. A strong belief. It's not always communicated. Sometimes we're not even conscious of it, but we have beliefs and ideas about things and the way we want it to happen that we, well, I can't say expect in the definition, but we already have an idea of the way we want things to go. We feel like it should go a certain way, and therefore we start expecting it to go a certain way. But in a marriage, we need to talk about how we expect things to go, or there can be quite a bit of frustration and fighting. So I would like you, in your handout, there's a section, it says expectations for a husband and a wife, and there's just a blank area for you to write about those expectations when you think of, no Silas. My mom. When you think of the word husband, what type of expectations do you have for a person who is a husband? When you think of wife, what kind of expectations do you have for a woman who is a wife? I kind of want you to brainstorm some of those things and jot them down in the next few minutes. Does anybody need a pen? Great. I know you. Okay.
We have some, Jeff. I think we're all together.
Yeah. So as a couple, you can.
Oh, as a couple.
Oh, say we use the tag.
The golf pencil.
Maybe.
And you're already way ahead.
Yeah, I know.
Now the question is,
You're supposed to do for a wife too.
the expectation of what a wife thinks a husband should be, or a husband.
There's expectation.
They're already fighting. So when you think of They already
I
find a
am.
husband.
Yeah.
What kind of things would you expect
Yes,
from
you
that?
did, yes, you did.
I don't believe that you have no expectations.
Yeah.
We all do, we just don't realize it.
Yeah, it can be very general, it can be specific. I think sometimes we think of husband and wife, and we already have black tie and white dress and a lot of other characteristics, behaviors that go along with that.
Harder.
There's the teacher, she's like, see, that
I know, that's when you're like,
Yeah.
She's on the
I don't wanna
class.
look in case I got something wrong.
make everybody nervous.
There is no wrong answers. This is a safe place.
Wrong, you're Alex.
Absolutely.
Counseling lingo there.
I've had a lot of practice being wrong. Good at it.
Okay, I wanna put a little bit of spin on it. Are all the things you're listing what you expect for yourself as a spouse and for your spouse? And if not, maybe jot some more of those things. What do you expect for yourself and what do you expect for your spouse within the husband and wife roles? All right, I'll give you about one more minute.
Creepy.
For next week, Mike. She has stories she can tell.
I'm sure she does.
Not sharing those.
She can write a book.
Sir, that's right.
Talk around the house naked, no man would have it.
No
children are struggling. That's how you get them out. That's a good word.
Okay, so would you guys mind sharing some of the things that you came up with? Expectations for husbands and expectation for wives.
Providers seem to be very popular for the husband.
For the husband, okay?
We just spent that like 3 minutes.
Protector.
Protector for husband.
Take care of the kids, wife.
Wife, okay?
Spiritual leader,
Which one?
the husband.
Okay.
Nurture for the wife.
Nurture.
I would say also lover for the husband.
Okay,
He's commanded to love his wife.
okay,
And the wife is commanded to respect her husband.
okay.
I think work is for both roles.
Worker, work,
Say budget for wife.
budgeter.
In some parts.
It is.
So where's that?
Good.
Good father, good mother,
Good father, good mother.
role models.
Say flexible / gracious for both as well.
Say discipliner husband.
Discipliner, yeah.
Thank you.
Wife.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go
Wife's a
ahead.
cooker.
Yeah, wife.
Cooker, okay.
Anymore.
Can I say something about that?
Yes.
My dad used to always wake up and make breakfast on Saturdays. So why would I think that Mario would do that?
You were surprised when you.
And he can make breakfast, but by the time he gets up, I'm already like, I already had my breakfast. We're shopping.
Too late.
We're worked out, so can't wait for him.
Wait, you could put cooker for husband too.
Okay,
Cook too. I say, support wife, like to support
supporter,
for wife.
okay.
Like,
For husband, I think both, they should both be
I
supported.
mean, like, not financial, I mean,
Yeah.
to support the husband. You know, the wife support.
The wife supports the
Yeah,
husband?
that's what I mean. like,
Support for what?
Kinda like,
Gotcha.
Not financial, just be a supportive person,
yeah.
helper.
I think keep the family together, more of a my wife, so like a grandma wife type of thing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like nurturer.
The heart of the family.
I have another one for the wife. She respects her husband's dreams and lets him
Ooh.
fulfill them,
Okay,
and vice versa.
yes. So, in your marriage, is this always true for husband and is this always true for the wife?
No,
No. But are some of them? Yeah. So some can be across the board, but some are very specific to your marriage and the way it works for you. So, let's talk about, this is gonna show up. Dell keeps wanting to do an update. I tell it no every time.
That's not good. You got some IT problems.
Well, that's your job, baby.
That's his role.
There you go,
That is
there's a
his
role.
role.
Check masters and mailing
Oh, that's another thing, yeah, like car stuff, that's more outside stuff.
Look at us coding this class.
Just call me collected.
What's the matter?
He's way over there.
Okay. Mine's a touchscreen. Okay, good. So we're gonna talk about different categories that we may have expectations. So there are different areas that we may assume things within our marriage. So the first one I put are tasks. This is a big one. These are little things. These little tiny stones can pile up into a mountain that can crush your marriage. I mean, it can cause so much frustration and fighting and anger. So little things like, does he put the shower curtain back in the shower after he gets out?
Turn your clothes right side up.
Does he turn his clothes right side out before he puts them in the laundry basket so that I don't have to reach in and put them right side out before I do the laundry? Does he take out the garbage? Does the wife take out the garbage? Who's gonna drive on a long distance trip? Do one of you assume you're gonna do it all? Does the other one assume you're gonna share? Are you going to have a pet? Are you going to sleep with a fan on? Do you expect that you're gonna go to bed at the same time?
I want to. It's like our counselor, right?
Who's gonna cook? Who's gonna do dishes? All these little tasks, but we assume and expect. Before we're even married, we assume it's gonna be a certain way.
And if you're not careful, you can start telling yourself a story about how my tasks are more than her task,
Yeah.
or her task, she might be telling herself a similar story. So if you're not communicating about things like tasks and expectations in relation to tasks, you can end up building bitterness or resentment about the accomplishment of those tasks.
Yes.
We call it for that.
And this category, like I said, it's probably where most of the frustration and fighting comes, because this is the daily grind. This is where we live.
Yeah.
Another category, communication. So when you both get home in the evening and you say, how was your day? Do you expect them to spill their guts and tell you about how they talked to this person and this was their conversation and this is how they felt in this situation? And if your spouse says, that was good, are you satisfied with that? Do you feel like they're holding something back? You feel like you don't even know them anymore because they don't even share anything with you anymore? There's no vulnerability in your relationship. Those type of things can happen. Even communication about schedules. You know, I thought you knew that I was going to go to the grocery store before I came home. Yeah, I'm 45 minutes late. I didn't know that you had to run to, so-and-so's house to pick up whatever. And this lack of communication or miscommunication about scheduling can become
Gmail's
pretty
free.
frustrating.
Gmail's free.
Gmail, is that how you communicate with Ann? Oh, the calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Shared calendars are nice, especially when you're doing life together. So communication. Another category, lifestyle choices. This is, where are we going to live after we get married? Do we want to be by your family? Do we want to be by my family? Who are we going to spend Christmas with on Christmas Day? Holidays are a big deal. Yeah. How many kids are we going to have? As a woman, am I going to work to contribute, or am I going to stay home with the kids? Do you already have a conviction or a thought about that? Do I already have a conviction or a thought about that?
Well, I would say it's important to recognize too, like conviction versus practicality, because sometimes in life we do things for a season to survive,
Yeah.
or to do things, but sometimes God also puts things in our hearts for different or bigger things. And if you're not communicating about those things, especially when it comes to convictions, there could be a lot of resentment in that area too, because you're not communicating about that conviction, and especially if it affects your lifestyle, because now somebody else may have to give up something in that lifestyle to support someone else.
Yeah. And sacrifice is hard,
Yeah.
even if it's on purpose.
Yeah.
It is a hard thing to do. Another thing that even we had to talk about before we got married was, is it okay to have lunch with someone of the opposite sex? When I was in college, I was involved in ministry, and I wouldn't think twice about, having lunch in a public place with another guy who was in the ministry that, maybe he was another leader or something. I mean, it wasn't a big deal to me, but it was a big deal as a married woman.
Yeah.
I had never been one before.
Yeah.
And so just talking about that expectation and how that would make my spouse feel, it's important. It's important to address those kind of things. Another category, financial planning. This can be a very big deal in a marriage as well. And you may have grown up in a home that did finances a certain way, and you expect just to keep doing them a certain way, and it might not work in your marriage. You may have been single for a while and working full time and bringing in bank and feeling good, and then you get married and some debt comes along with the person you love. And how do you sacrifice the lifestyle that you know and you're used to in order to make that work? Do you expect to have to? Is it your responsibility now? There are all those type of emotions and questions wrapped up into it. So you'll have to decide what your savings is going to look like, what your spending is going to look like, who's going to be the primary breadwinner. And sometimes in a marriage, if it's the woman, that's a whole nother set of things that need to be worked out of, because traditionally it is the man. And so what are your expectations regarding finances? Finances are such a huge topic in marriage, and they could break a marriage as well.
I talked to a lot of couples, and I am shocked with some of the younger couples that it's her money, his money, separate.
Yes.
They have their own bills,
Yes.
and it's not something they own themselves.
Yeah. A lot of people do that now, and for various reasons.
I just don't understand it.
Yes. Because a lot of people, that's another expectation. You come into marriage, you think the two become one. So that means our bank account becomes one, and all of our bills are in both of our names, and everything's in both of our names, and we kind of pool everything and then pull out of the pool. It's not as common anymore. So, come back in October for the finance talk.
Great plug.
Yes.
Another category, physical fulfillment. So I know the Lewises will talk about this more next week,
I'm
but
excited.
many people, when they get married, especially the males, they think, I'm gonna be married and I'm gonna have sex whenever I want to, because it's gonna be fine and there's no guilt and it's gonna be fantastic. And then if it doesn't happen that way, there can be frustration and resentment toward your spouse. And so talking about what does that look like for us, what really is realistic and not just Hollywood, because there's a difference between those two. But there can be other things besides sex. Physical fulfillment can even be, are we gonna hold hands in public? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah,
Are we gonna kiss each other in front of your parents?
yeah.
Is that weird? Like, there are other just, physical affection. Affection is important, but personality-wise, some people are not as comfortable with public displays of affection. Some people are not as comfortable as being affectionate in front of their parents as another person. So those type of things are important to talk about, because it can then tie into feeling rejected and hurt. I mean, hurt can happen very quickly. So those conversations are very important. Any questions or comments so far?
These things can change over the years, obviously.
Oh,
We'll always
yes.
be talking about them.
For sure, for sure. And a lot of things, as time goes on, they get ironed out. Because you get to know the other person so well.
And like, you don't have to be intimate 5 times a week, it can maybe only be like 3 times a week, that's okay.
And then that's okay.
Or suggested as once a month when you first get married.
Come on now.
It's crazy.
Different seasons, they have like 10 kids,
Okay,
Things change over time.
things change over time. So where do we get our expectations from? Yeah. Culture. So, movie, TVs, books, social media, right? There are these pictures of marriage and what it could look like. And it hardly ever like shows the nitty gritty of
Morning
my
breath.
house is a mess and I don't like you so much and my kids are crazy and disrespectful and whatever, and I'm trying to love you, but sometimes I love Nate, but there are some times where we say, I love you, but I don't like you right now. Okay, and love is deep, like we're good, but there's just those times where it's like let's have our own space for a little bit and then come back. Yeah. But a lot of times we are shown what marriage is by our culture. And
Disposable, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and also disposable. If you're not happy, then you don't have to stay. And that is definitely not godly. Not godly. But it is cultural. Divorce is rampant. So, culture is one way that we see or might even absorb expectations. The church. And if you notice on your handout that the church and biblical or the Bible are 2 different things. Because the church can teach things without even formally teaching them. Do you know what I mean? Nate and I, when we first got married, right, pretty in the beginning, we attended a little Bible church down in Coloma, Michigan. And everyone at the Bible church, it was only 30 people. It was very small, thick preaching. You're not going to understand anything unless you've been a believer for like 12, 13 years. It was a little country club. And they were very adamant about protecting their children and making sure that their families were growing in Christ. It felt like a light under a bowl. But what we saw, and kind of the things I picked up on, were the women always wore skirts to church. They homeschooled their children. They were adamant about spending time with God, and it was not a 15-minute little thing when you woke up. Okay, this was like serious business, and I'm going to read a commentary for my devotional, like very thick. And you didn't get a divorce. There was one couple in the church that the woman had been married before, and the husband stepped out, didn't want to be married to her. He left her. They got a divorce, and she remarried to a godly man. They had children. They had been involved in the church for a number of years. They were big givers, but they would not let him be on the board because he was married to a woman who had been divorced.
I've been there before. To a church like that.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But we were just growing as a husband and wife and in our faith. And there were a lot of things that we took in from that church that later on we had to address because there was no grace involved. There was no, the gospel, it felt way more law than the gospel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we had to kind of work through those things. And so that's why when I say the church, I think sometimes we are given information or see things from leaders who love God. But they might not actually line up biblically. And I'm really not knocking the church, but we always have to go back.
There's a point to that, like, as we continue through this class, and where Jen is taking us is to a point to really point us back to where we should be comparing our expectations to. And that's always the Bible. We should be going to the Bible to look at checking our own expectations and what we expect out of our spouse, and that should be where we go to for our truth.
Yes, yes. So another area that we might get expectations from your family. So growing up, Aleda said every Saturday morning her father got up and made them all breakfast. So she could have very easily expected Mario to get up on Saturday mornings, cook us all breakfast, babe. That's what the man does. And if that didn't happen, that could cause frustration. Why aren't you getting up? Why aren't you making breakfast for our family? Don't you love us? That's the way that my dad showed us he loved us. And it can cause those type of things. So we see a marriage a lot of times. Growing up, we see a husband and wife day in and day out. And we can build a lot of our expectations based on the things that we see from our parents and the way that they interact and treat each other and what their responsibilities are within the marriage. So family, your family is one place. Your own values. So as I was like, listening to different sermons and reading different things about expectations, one of the people that I was watching, probably should quote them, but I don't remember who it was. They said that, and I agree, a lot of times expectations in marriage, we project our own values onto our spouse. And we think that they should care about parenting like we care, and therefore want to do it this way because this is the right way. And they should have the same work ethic as we have. And they should drive in a certain manner. And they should, do these things in a certain way.
Make the bet.
Make the bed a certain way. Yes.
Not swerving, a rabbit comes out the road. So hold that wheel and go straight.
And then run over it and kill it. Yeah, we've been there. That was a hard day. I didn't die,
I
but
hope you're happy.
that is what I said.
Exactly what you said. She had one tear leaked right out of her. It was like she swerved to miss a jackrabbit, and the next day she's driving again. Boom, got one, right? Leaked out the tear, and she says, "I hope you're happy."
I was like, never swear for an animal. It's a hard lesson. But we project our own values onto our spouse. And if they don't care about things the way we care about things, we can get frustrated and think, why don't you care about this? This is important. Or why don't you do things this way? This is the best way to do it, right? If you fold a towel this way, you just, there it is, it's done, it's beautiful, there you go. Why? What's so hard about that, right?
See, he rolls that fold.
Yes, so we project onto them. But it can cause a lot of resentment because then our spouse is hearing, everything I do is wrong. You don't love me just for me, for who I am. Like, this is who I am. This is how I do things. Why isn't that good enough? And so we have to be really careful about that projection. Mm-hmm.
I tell him kiddingly, but I really mean it, but I laugh. If you just do what I tell you to do, everything will be all right. But he doesn't.
That's simple.
But he
In a
doesn't.
marriage.
A lot of times he does, probably just to keep the peace, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it can come up, especially with things like work ethic. Like, I would say that Jen and I had very drastic differences in work ethic.
Oh, yeah.
It did not mean that she was lazy, but it meant that I was at 99 miles an hour and she's at like a 10. She's still doing what she's doing.
I 35 at
35.
least.
At the same time, you can't maintain 99 miles an hour your whole life. So like in a sense, by me even adjusting and understanding, like I can actually change myself a little bit, my own expectations for myself, just by not thinking that I'm always right. Like it's kind of like two people in a room, back to back, you both see the room entirely different. It doesn't mean the other person's perspective is wrong, they just see it different. So you have to appreciate that difference in perspective, especially when it comes to things like expectations, even though you might feel like, hey, this is how we do it, we go with the foot down on the gas and we just, wow. That's not always the best way.
Yeah. I once heard this story about this woman who, every time she cooked a ham, she'd cut the ends off the ham, she'd put it in the pan and put it in the oven. And one time, her daughter asked her, Mom, why do you cut the ends off the ham? She's like, that's what my mom did. That's what we always did. So when Grandma gets here, let's ask her. So when Grandma walked in, they said, Grandma, why why is it this family thing that we always cut the ends off the ham? And she's like, well, the pan I used, the ham didn't fit. I don't know why you guys keep cutting the ends off the ham. But there are some things we just hold on to. It's the way that we've learned, the way that we've always done it. And, we have to be willing to change and willing to learn and alter and compromise.
Flexibility.
So, expectations, biblical. Biblical expectations for a husband and for a wife. That's where we should be drawing our expectations. And I understand that the Bible does not clearly state who should be taking out the garbage and who gets to change the baby's diaper at 2 a.m. and these things that we have expectations about that can cause issues. But the Bible has a lot to say to a husband and to a wife about their respective roles. So let's go over the biblical expectations for a husband and wife. How about you talk about the husband?
So for a husband, he loves his wife. Ephesians 5, we'll go right to 5, 21 through 33. It really gets into submission and love. You're the servant leader. You're the example.
Mm-hmm.
You have to provide with words, protection, assisting, sacrifice, and be vulnerable with your wife. Gentleness, Colossians 3:18 and 3:19. 3:19 is, husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. It's very easy to be frustrated and drop truth bombs, right? But truth without love is brutal. So you cannot be brutal with your wife. You have to protect her. And same thing, you can't just give her love without truth, because then you're lying to her. You have to do both. You have to give her truth and love. And sometimes it's very hard. I will share. There was a point in our marriage one time where we were away at a conference, and I had a godly conviction to share something with her, and I shared something with her that was hard to share in relation to parenting. And when I did, she was not happy about it. Like, it really caused, it was like...
We're at Ruth's Chris down at the Amway having this fancy dinner, and he tells me this, and it was truth. It was very hard to hear, and I cried in the bathroom for about 20 minutes. But it changed the trajectory of my parenting. I was not a nice mom for a while.
You're mean.
We all struggle.
I was overwhelmed, and I wasn't kind of.
They're little monsters.
Absolutely. It can be
It was
difficult.
that 41 hours.
I knew it was 40, I'm like, that's fine. Oh, I was already there, so it wouldn't have been a big trip.
But it was good. I mean, it was exactly what I needed to hear. It was very hard to hear.
And there's been times that she shared things with me, like especially when my vision is clouded by negativity or my own defeat. Like I'm a different person. Like my perspective, even the way I act and interact with people around me, it's dark. It's tinged a little bit with cynicism and not compassion. It's not who I normally am. It depends upon which set of eyes I have in my head. And she pointed out to me before, like, yeah, you can tell when your eyes are seeing the fleshly things and your mind is filled with that because your heart is different. Sexual fulfillment. I don't have them all memorized.
1 Corinthians
Husband
7.
should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourself to prayer. Then come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control.
Mhm.
So, I mean, even in marriage, like, sexual fulfillment is very important, and people have different sex drives. I mean, we've generally given counseling in the past that, you know, the higher sex drive spouse is the one that's usually initiating and leading in that, and that there has to be an agreement, and that you can't deprive each other for reasons. It isn't a weapon.
Yes,
It's a
it cannot
method of
be
connecting and
punishment.
being able to get past things. There's been many times I think you could solve an argument by saying, let's just be intimate and then we'll continue this conversation. And you know what, that's completely different.
It changes the conversation.
That's what I said.
That's what we've been
I know my
missing.
boy Paul, see, I know Paul.
We're off right now, let's reconnect and then come back to this and see where we're at.
Mhm. So, let's talk about the wife. She submits to her husband and she respects him. So in Ephesians 5, and if you look verses 21 to 33, there's a whole lot to say to husbands and to wives. I'm sure that you've talked about Ephesians 5 in past classes because it's a great chapter. It's a great chapter. But wives are called to submit to their husbands as they do to the Lord. They are called to respect their husbands. They are called to be the helper. So in Genesis, when God made Adam, he put Adam into the garden, and God said, there's no suitable helper for Adam. He had Adam name all the animals, and there wasn't a suitable helper for him, a companion, a partner for Adam. So he put Adam to sleep. He took
First surgery.
the first surgery. Yep.
Surgery.
He took a rib out of Adam's body, and out of that rib, he created the woman. And then, I think it's so beautiful because it reminds me of a marriage. Because God brought the woman, just like a father brings his daughter down the aisle to her new husband, God brought the woman to Adam and said, here is your wife. And he loved her. It says that they became one. They left their father and mother and they became one. And they were naked and they were without shame. There was vulnerability there. There was unity there. And it was beautiful. So she should be a helper to him in his tasks, in his life. Even, a respecter of his dreams. She should encourage him. She should help in any way possible to provide the best for her husband.
Can I add one thing to that?
Mhm.
So one thing I forgot to cover in Ephesians 5 that always stuck out to me is just that how you're supposed to love your wife is with that help or that respect that your wife is giving you. You're also supposed to love her like Jesus loved the church, which means die for her, literally. So what is it that you have to die to? Like, and that's something I ask myself a lot. Like, what are the things that I have to die to love my wife?
Okay, so wives. I'm bringing this up because this section in Proverbs 31 is called the wife of noble character, even though no one on the whole earth ever can live up to all the things listed in this section, okay? We can strive for it. but we'll never live up to it. However, there are a lot of great things, verses 10 through 31 in Proverbs 31, that we can pull out of there. So the wife of noble character, it says that she lives in such a way that her husband has confidence in her. He lacks nothing. Like, he is secure because of the way that she lives and she loves him. She brings him good. She is a hard worker. She provides for her family. She's industrious. She works vigorously. She opens her arms to the poor and the needy. Her family is provided for. She is a nurturer. She cares for her family. She provides for them. She's thrifty. She's making a lot of this stuff that they have. And after it lists all these things, it says that her children call her blessed, and her husband praises her. She's lived a life of providing and worthy of being called blessed by her children and by her husband. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. So there's a priority there. She loves God more than she loves herself. And sometimes that can, as women, I know me, as I struggle with wanting to look good and wanting to present myself well and wishing I was skinny and had, perfect cosmetics on my face every day and just all these things. But that is not what is important. I mean, we're going to get old. We're not going to look like we did in our 20s. And that is okay. Because when we love the Lord, we're beautiful. Like, that is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So a wife of noble character. And then sexual fulfillment, just like the husband. The wife does not withhold her body from her husband. One thing that Nate and I decided early on in our marriage, Nate had struggled a little bit with pornography.
Navy.
And he was a Navy guy. It was everywhere. Even if you didn't want to look at it, it was in your face. And so when we got married, I did not like that because I felt like I was in competition. And I was the wife, and I can never live up to this video image. And we made a deal that anytime he felt tempted, that we would be intimate, and I would not say no to him. And it helped him.
90% of the time. 98% sometimes.
98% of the time.
80%.
Except
Like when we had children.
when we had, the 12 days after we had children. So
I'm glad
that
we
was,
talk about that. Because we talk about that in men's group.
yeah. And it's easily accessible, and it's a temptation. I mean,
It requires vulnerability on the part of the man to seek out his wife.
It
if
does.
She may not be available for whatever reasons. That does happen. I mean, and to be like, hey, it's cool, maybe you can get me later.
yeah, and to not have it be a personal thing, like you're rejecting me, but I want to do this, maybe right now is not the best time, but not using it as a weapon, like Nate said before. Not saying no just to say no, when really there's no reason. Making sure that you're connecting that way. Intimacy in a marriage is a way that you can connect to another person. You don't connect to anyone else in the world in that way. It is such a special thing. So don't withhold from each other, especially just to be petty. And I've been there, so I can say that. So it's a real thing. But it's another biblical expectation. So no matter where you get your expectations from, when you don't understand someone's expectations, you can't make sense of their disappointments. And that's why communication is so important. Because all of a sudden your spouse can be mad at you and you have no idea what just happened. Like, what just happened here?
Like unwashed laundry.
Yeah, like, It's funny, I just told this story today. But when we first got married, I would do the laundry and Nate just, takes his stuff off and throws it in the basket, and I'm thankful he throws it in the basket. Thank you for throwing it in the basket.
Working 84 hours a week at times.
Yeah, so, and he exercises and he puts this stuff in the basket, and I go to do laundry and it's all inside out, and I really don't want to reach in this sweaty shirt and pull it right side out in order to wash it, or socks, or I just can't. And so I'd be like, babe, put your stuff right side out. Just take it off like this, and it wouldn't happen. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh, and babe, just put it out, right side out, so I could do the laundry, or I'd be, in there just putting it right side out and saying this and that. And eventually I decided, you know what, I'm gonna wash it how I get it. I'm gonna give it back how I get it. And that's what he's gonna get. And I would do the laundry, and I'd put it all in the washer, right, or inside out, and I'd wash it, and I'd throw it into the dryer, and I'd fold it. I think most of Nate's dresser right now are clothes that are folded inside out.
T-shirts, yes.
Yes. But do you know what he does? He gets them out, he puts them right side out, he puts it on, he goes on his way. He doesn't even notice that they're inside out. It would drive me crazy.
Who cares?
Yeah, it's not even a big deal. And so just one of those things that can be a big thing, and it is so not a big thing. And yeah, so communication, so important. Making sure, even if you feel this check in yourself of, okay, I'm frustrated, exploring that, being vulnerable with your spouse. And when you hear something, not getting defensive right away. Hopefully in your marriage, you guys want the best for each other. And so being able to talk about this frustrates me is not, you're doing this wrong, but it's let's work through this. Maybe you can change it, or do I need to change it? Is this a big deal?
Give each other the freedom to be wrong. That's the biggest gift I think that you can have in marriage, because I tried so many times. I'd be frustrated about something. I don't even remember half the things I've ever been frustrated about, but sometimes I feel frustrated, and I would say, okay, whenever I share this with her, that I'm frustrated about it, I don't feel frustrated anymore as soon as I share it. And then I feel like I have to apologize for being frustrated about this thing that I was frustrated about. So I thought, hey, you know what, I'm going to skip all that part. I'm just going to start apologizing right away and see if that works. And it didn't work, because I still felt frustrated. So God made me have to talk to my wife and tell her about my frustrations, and then realize that they weren't that big a deal through the communication of those frustrations.
And coming to a place for me to think, okay, is this something I need to change? Is it not? And instead of, because I'm naturally a people pleaser, wanting to change right away, or feeling, kind of suffocated, like, well, I can't do it my way, I gotta do it Nate's way. Instead, just waiting a little bit and then saying, okay, is this important? Like, does something need to change here? And coming back to it.
What does God have to say about
And
it?
sometimes we didn't. Nothing had to change. But we had to talk about it in order to resolve those emotions, because they can grow. They can grow. Okay. So, don't let expectation equal debt. What I mean by this is, there are certain things we can expect from our spouse that we feel like should come naturally. I expect Nate to go to work and make money for our family. I expect him, because he does the bills, to make sure they're paid on time. I expect him to watch the cars so that when it's time for an oil change, we get an oil change so that the engine doesn't blow. I expect these things. But when I start expecting them to the extreme where if he doesn't notice an oil change one time, or, decides not to go to work one day because he's just not feeling well, or maybe he wants to visit his dad, or any number of things, then I'm not then angry. Because there are some times where we have expectations, and if people meet our expectations, they're on level ground, we're good. But you don't meet my expectation, you're you're in debt now. You have not met my expectation, you're in trouble, this is not okay, you need to do something to make up for it. And it steals your gratitude, because when someone's just meeting your expectation, and it's something you think they should be doing anyway, am I gonna say thank you? I mean, if I'm thinking Nate should be going to work every day, that's the man's job, am I gonna say, thank you for going to work and making money for our family, babe? Probably not. I'm gonna think, well, that's what you're supposed to be doing anyway. And it becomes this debt ratio where either they're meeting my expectation, okay, cool, but if they don't, now they're in debt. There is anger and frustration. You need to make this up somehow. This is not okay. And it steals gratitude, because even though there are these tasks that we expect, you know, I do expect Nate to work for our family.
Take out the garbage, for example.
Take out the
Maybe that's more
garbage.
easy to see. Because maybe I forget to take out the garbage and you take it out one night.
Yeah. If Nate forgets to take out the garbage and then I take it out, then, you know, I'm not gonna jump on him because he forgot to take it out, which you would if you're keeping this record of wrongs, right? Which is 1 Corinthians 13. We're not gonna do that when we love. But I'm not gonna tell him thank you either if I'm just expecting that's his job. Babe, thanks for taking out the garbage tonight. It's a daily task, we deal with it all the time. But we still should be saying thank you to our spouse, even for things we expect from them.
Even if it's not verbally, it's in your own head, is the power of the positive gratitude and even prayerfully thanking God for them, for the things that they do in the marriage is just powerful. It changes your eyesight, the way you see them.
For sure. Yeah. So make sure you are saying thank you. Make sure you're not putting your spouse into this debt place if they're not meeting your expectations, and where they feel like they have to make it up to you somehow, where there's this anger. Because we are partners, and anything our spouse does is something we don't have to. That is a fantastic thing, right? We're living life together. So even if it's their role, their responsibility, you know, in your home, it's still something you don't have to do. And that's a beautiful thing. So gratitude's very important.
If you exceed expectations, you get extra points.
That's where that sexual fulfillment thing comes in.
Oh, okay.
You get a bonus. You get 1 point.
Wait, I didn't say these as well.
You get demerits.
Ask the Lewises next.
No, okay.
Okay.
Especially mine. I don't like it.
Well, it could be exceeding expectations in a lot of different areas, not just.
Okay. Are expectations okay to have? Yes. They are okay to have. There needs to be communication about them. I don't know that it's ever impossible not to have expectations. But don't let unmet expectations result in anger, frustration, or resentment toward your spouse. The enemy would love to get in there and grow those things to break up your marriage. So communication is so important. Grace is so important. Gratitude toward your spouse is so important. Know that your spouse will never meet all of your needs all the time. Never. God created us to be unsatisfied without Jesus. We will never be complete by a person, only by God. So the things that you are expecting from your spouse, make sure that they align with the Bible, but it can't be your happiness or your fulfillment or all of these beautiful Hollywood things that they make marriage out to be, because it will not happen.
Yeah, you're not completed by your spouse.
You're not completed by your spouse.
Your
You're
identity-
complemented
Your
by them.
identity comes from Jesus, but if you put that expectation on your spouse to validate your identity, you will always be disappointed,
Mhm.
because it's not their job.
Your identity comes from where?
Jesus.
Your identity comes from where?
From your father.
From Jesus. No, I was wanting you to emphasize that.
He wants
The
you to.
Father, the Holy
That was a
Spirit.
trick question, Lisa.
Your expect.
Okay.
You can't get that from your spouse at all.
One of the things in my premarital counseling that drives me nuts is when, and it's usually a younger woman. Oh, he completes me. And it makes me want to just shoot myself in the head.
You're like, "Oh, you're not ready yet."
Yeah. Go out and live life for a while. He's gonna fail you miserably. Oh, he'd never do that.
Oh, yeah. Just like, it was
Yeah. We're all fallen, we're all sinful.
I'm gonna fail you at some point
Yeah.
this week, probably.
And I think that comes from anything, like parents, your pastor, the church, because we're all human. Like,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And yeah, we want to belong and we want to be accepted for who we are. And we are. We belong to the family of Christ. We are accepted and being made better and better all the time if we're surrendering our life to God. But we look to people for those things all the time. And yeah, we will always be let down.
You know, that's really mature, Mickey. Well, you know, how many people leave churches because something happens, the pastor doesn't do this or that, or somebody screws up, or, you know,
Yeah.
and, you know, I think I'm fairly open. Most everybody in here knows me. I'm gonna screw up. You know, and Kathy's gonna screw up, and, well, Braden probably not, but,
Just don't let him play basketball.
yeah.
And jumping ones.
Sorry. You're still amazing.
And then with expectations, know that everything will not be fair. Okay, sometimes we think that you have to have just as many responsibilities as I do so that it's fair within the marriage. We don't want to be pulling all the weight, carrying all the responsibility or all the burden of the daily life. But if you're expecting fair, if you're expecting equality, then it becomes this competition instead of a partnership. Because you have a pool of responsibilities every day. If it's caring for the home, paying all the bills, taking care of the kids, all those things. And they all need to get done. And if you're working together to get them done, great, it's a partnership. And I know with all of these things, it's a delicate subject, because if you have one spouse who, you know, sits on the couch all day and watches TV, and the other one is working and taking care of the home and kids and doing a lot more, that's unhealthy. That's not okay. But we can't always be striving for this fairness, this equal responsibility, because it won't be that way. And it ebbs and flows, and that's just the way of it.
And we're being constantly matured as we walk and as we continue on the path of righteousness. Then there's gonna be seasons of life where God is really working in my heart and my spirit on different things. So maybe like that's pulling me into a different direction, and maybe my home responsibilities will suffer because of it, or the same will happen to Jen. And there's a give and take that happens in a healthy relationship with expectations where you can cover for each other as you mature together and separately.
Yeah. There was a time, not long ago, maybe a year ago, but Nate works full-time, and he has started this side business where he does some consulting work. And it's been great, but it does take a lot of time. So, you know, full-time at work plus this side business. And so I'm driving kids to and from school and taking them to appointments and doing these things. And sometimes I might feel like, you know, if they have a snow day, then I'm home, or, you know, I'm the one that kind of fills in the gaps.
I covered a lot more stuff.
And at that time, I was filling in a lot of the gaps. And I was starting to feel frustrated. But then I felt convicted because I felt like, do I want my life to change? Do I want Nate to go to part-time so that I can, what, not take the kids to school?
Yeah.
No, because then it puts more on me, then I would probably have to do full-time and these, you know, like, did I want my life to change?
Yeah.
Not really, not the big picture, no, I didn't. And so during that season, it was my role to do a lot more things at home and with the kids, and that was okay, because that's just what had to happen for us. So hopefully you can kind of ride those waves, because it does change. And fairness is not something to strive for, because it definitely is then a measurement. You're competing with each other, and you should never be competing with each other in a marriage. Okay, so how do you communicate your expectations to your spouse? I know there are some things listed there about communication styles, but I just want you to think about it for a minute, personally. How do you show your spouse your expectations? Do you just blurt them out? This is what I expect? Are there some subtle nonverbals that you throw at each other sometimes?
Is this an open conversation, or this like speak out, or?
Well, we can.
Oh, I didn't know where we was going with that. I think we talk, we try to talk, especially when kids are not around. But I know there's signs that he try to give me and I'd be like, oh, I don't want to hear that. But, so when you was talking about the sexual fulfillment, I definitely was listening to that. Because I think my brain is like on mommy mode at all times, and I don't think about him as much as I think about the kids. I love them, but
Yeah.
I'm always like, okay, what a time appointment tomorrow, what I gotta, do this and do that, and not thinking about my spouse. So
Yeah.
I definitely need to listen more on that. See, I'm listening.
It's like,
Like, oh, I guess, okay. Got the ball? No.
good.
And to the other side, I think sometimes, like, I know, like, I stayed home last winter with the kids a lot, right? But I also know that because I was home a lot, I could hear in her voice, she's like, are you sure you've been staying home with the kids? Like, we had those crazy snow days last year?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole week
Well,
off.
versus you.
So I was like staying home with the kids, and she was like, is everything okay? And I could have been like,